The summer morning was calm when Rahim and his daughter Mina arrived at their new home. The house stood at the corner of a clean, quiet street surrounded by bright green lawns and neat fences. Rahim was a federal judge who had recently transferred to a new city. He wanted a peaceful life away from the noise of the city and thought this neighborhood would be perfect. Mina, who was in college, was excited to spend her vacation with her father after a long semester. As soon as they started unloading the boxes, a few neighbors came by to greet them. An older man named Mr. Brooks smiled kindly and helped Rahim lift a heavy box. A young couple across the street waved and introduced themselves as Sam and Lena. Everyone seemed polite and welcoming. Rahim felt hopeful. He had worked hard for many years and was finally ready to enjoy a quiet life. But not everyone shared that same warmth. Across the street stood a woman named Karen Miller. She was the head of the Homeowners Association, known to everyone as HOA Karen. She was tall, always dressed neatly, and constantly carried a clipboard. Her sharp eyes moved from house to house like she was searching for problems. She didn't smile when she saw Rahim's car, or when Mina waved politely. She just nodded stiffly and walked back inside her house. Rahim didn't pay much attention. He believed in minding his own business and hoped she would too. But Karen was not that type of person. She liked control. She believed she was protecting the neighborhood from rule breakers, and in her mind, new families always brought trouble. Later that evening, as Rahim and Mina sat on the porch enjoying tea, Karen appeared again. She crossed the street with her clipboard and forced a smile. "Good evening," she said in a strict tone. "I'm Karen Miller, head of the HOA. I just wanted to remind you that our neighborhood has rules. No loud music, no parking on the street overnight, and lawns must be trimmed every Saturday." Rahim nodded politely. "Of course. Thank you for letting me know. We'll follow all the rules." Karen's eyes moved toward Mina. "And who might you be?" Mina smiled. "I'm Mina, his daughter. I'm visiting for the summer." Karen frowned slightly. "Visiting? All right. Just make sure visitors don't stay for too long without HOA registration. We like to keep things orderly." Rahim's smile faded a little, but he kept calm. "Don't worry. Everything will be in order." Karen gave a short nod and walked away. Mina looked at her father. She seemed strict. Rahim chuckled softly. "Some people like to feel important. Just ignore it." Days passed and Rahim and Mina settled in. They painted a few rooms, planted flowers in the front yard, and greeted friendly neighbors. Everyone seemed happy that Rahim moved in, except Karen. She often walked by their house, pretending to check the street, but her eyes always watched them closely. One Friday afternoon, Mina's college friend Aisha came to visit. They laughed in the yard, took pictures, and chatted near the driveway. They were just two young women catching up after months apart. But across the street, Karen stood behind her curtain, frowning. She noticed a car parked in front of Rahim's house and two young women sitting outside. In her mind, this was already a problem. She grabbed her phone and started writing notes on her clipboard. Unauthorized visitor. Possible violation of HOA parking rule. Suspicious activity. She didn't actually see anything wrong, but she liked to act as if she did. That evening, when Rahim came out to water the plants, Karen marched across the street again. "Mr. Rahim," she said sharply, "I noticed a vehicle parked outside your house today. I didn't see any visitor registration form submitted. All guests must be reported to the HOA." Rahim looked confused. "That was my daughter's friend. She only stayed for a few hours." Karen lifted her eyebrows. "Even so, rules are rules. We can't allow random visitors. It makes the neighborhood unsafe." Mina, who was nearby, tried to explain. "It's just my friend, ma'am. She didn't do anything wrong." Karen gave her a cold smile. "Young lady, I'll decide what's wrong here." Rahim's calm expression changed slightly. His voice remained gentle but firm. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Miller, but there was no harm. Please rest assured that everything was proper." Karen walked away without another word, but her eyes were filled with irritation. She didn't like being corrected, especially by someone new. The next morning, Rahim went to work early. Mina stayed home, cleaning the kitchen and reading a book in the living room. Around noon, Aisha came by again to drop off a gift she had forgotten to give yesterday. They stood in the driveway laughing and talking. It was a peaceful moment until Karen saw them again. This time, she felt certain she was catching something serious. She called two other HOA members and said in a tense voice, "There's a situation at the new neighbor's house. Teen girls loitering again. Possible trespassing. One of the members tried to calm her, but Karen didn't listen. She said she would handle it and hung up. Then she called the local police department. Yes, officer, she said, sounding urgent. There are unknown girls on private property. I think they're not supposed to be there. The homeowner might be away. Within 15 minutes, 2 police cars pulled up in front of Rahim's house. Sirens were off, but the flashing lights drew attention. Neighbors came outside, whispering to each other. Mina and Aisha froze in surprise. 2 officers stepped out. One of them, Officer Grant, approached carefully. Ladies, may I ask what's going on here? Mina tried to stay calm. I live here, sir. My father owns this house. This is my friend visiting. Karen came rushing out of her house, waving her clipboard. Officer, that's them. They're not supposed to be here. I told you the homeowner is away. This is suspicious. The officer looked at her, then back at Mina. Do you have any identification, miss? Mina quickly brought her college ID and house keys. Please, sir. My father's name is Rahim. He's at work. Karen crossed her arms. That's not enough. I told you she's lying. Officer Grant sighed. Ma'am, we'll handle this. He looked at Mina kindly. It's okay. Just wait a moment while we confirm. At that moment, Rahim's car turned into the street. He had come home early to pick up a file he forgot. When he saw the police cars in front of his house, his heart sank. He parked quickly and stepped out. Officer, is something wrong? He asked firmly. Karen rushed to explain. Yes, officer. Your daughter invited people without permission and they were acting suspiciously. I had to call for safety reasons. Rahim's calm eyes turned cold. He stepped closer, pulled out his identification card and handed it to the officer. It clearly said Federal Judge Rahim Ahmed. The officer's eyes widened with respect. Sir, my apologies. We didn't realize. There seems to be a misunderstanding. Rahim looked at his daughter, then at Karen. His voice was calm but filled with authority. Yes, there is a misunderstanding. A serious one. The neighbors watched silently, feeling the tension rise. Karen's face turned pale. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The quiet street had never seen such a scene before, and everyone could feel that this was only the beginning of something much larger. Rahim took a deep breath and looked at the police officers calmly. Officers, thank you for coming. There is no issue here. My daughter invited a friend over for the afternoon and everything is perfectly lawful. Officer Grant nodded slowly, still holding Rahim's ID. Yes, sir. We understand. We just wanted to make sure everything was safe. Karen, however, did not step back. She clutched her clipboard tightly and said, Sir, with all due respect, I am the head of the Homeowners Association. My job is to protect the neighborhood. Rules are rules. Visitors must be approved. Rahim turned his attention toward her, his voice calm but firm. Mrs. Miller, I respect the rules of the neighborhood, and I have no intention of ignoring them. However, your behavior today was completely unnecessary. You called the police over a harmless visit. You did not confirm facts before making assumptions. Karen's eyes narrowed. She tried to appear confident. I only acted to protect the residents. This street has a reputation for occasional trouble. I was doing my duty. Rahim smiled politely. Duty is important. But duty without verification is dangerous. You should always verify facts before escalating a situation. The neighbors had gathered around, curious to see how this confrontation would unfold. Mrs. Lee from across the street whispered to Mr. Brooks, I think she has finally met someone who will not be intimidated. Rahim continued, addressing the officers. You may leave now. There is nothing further required. Officer Grant nodded. Understood, sir. Thank you for your patience. He returned to his car and soon the police drove away. As the officers left, Karen looked furious. Her lips pressed into a tight line and her hands trembled slightly as she held the clipboard. She had never been challenged like this before. Rahim turned toward his daughter. Mina, are you all right? Mina smiled weakly. Yes, Dad, I'm fine. I just did not expect her to call the police over a simple visit. Rahim nodded. Some people believe rules are more important than common sense. It's important to remain calm and let facts speak for themselves. Karen, however, was not done. The next morning she began sending emails and letters to the entire neighborhood. She complained about Rahim's family, describing them as unpredictable and unsafe. She added that any future visitors must be pre-approved in writing, and that the HOA would monitor the property closely. When Rahim received a copy, he read it carefully. His expression remained calm, but his mind was working quickly. He could handle this situation with patience and intelligence. Reacting angrily would only make her more aggressive. Later that day, he spoke with his neighbors. "I wanted to let you all know about the events from yesterday," he began. "There was no danger at any point. My daughter and her friend were visiting safely. I ask for understanding and common sense. Rules are important, but they should not override reason and kindness." The neighbors nodded. Mrs. Lee said, "You handled this well, Rahim. Most of us were worried about how to deal with her. It's good to have someone calm and smart on the street." Rahim smiled politely. "Thank you. I believe in fairness and order. That is what I follow in my work as a federal judge, and I expect the same respect in everyday life." Karen, meanwhile, was furious at her home. She muttered to herself, "Who does he think he is? Just because he has a title does not mean he can ignore the rules." She began planning her next move. Determined to assert control over the neighborhood, Mina, seeing her father's calm approach, learned an important lesson. She said, "Dad, you handled everything so calmly. I thought she would make things worse, but you turned it around without arguing." Rahim smiled. Patience and logic are powerful. Anger often makes people act recklessly. Understanding the situation first allows us to respond correctly. Days went by and Karen continued her attempts to interfere. She would watch from her window, take notes, and occasionally send letters about supposed violations. Rahim, however, ignored her provocations and focused on his work and time with Mina. One afternoon, Rahim decided it was time to take a small action to address the tension without confrontation. He invited the neighbors for a casual tea on his porch. Sam and Lena, Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Lee, and a few others joined. Everyone sat together, sharing stories and laughter. Rahim spoke gently to the group. "I understand there are concerns about new neighbors, but we must trust each other and communicate directly. Assumptions only create fear and conflict." The neighbors nodded. One of them, Mr. Brooks, smiled. "We appreciate your calm approach. It reminds us that not everything requires escalation." Even Karen received an invitation. The HOA president, unaware of the growing tension, delivered a polite note. Karen's lips tightened as she read it. She felt conflicted but decided to attend, thinking it would be an opportunity to assert herself. During the tea, Rahim welcomed her politely. "Mrs. Miller, thank you for joining us." Karen hesitated but sat down. The neighbors watched curiously. Rahim continued, "This is a friendly gathering to get to know each other. Differences exist, but respect and understanding should guide us." Karen, for the first time, felt slightly embarrassed. Her aggressive attitude seemed out of place among friendly neighbors sharing tea and laughter. She realized that Rahim's calm presence and authority had shifted the dynamic. While the conversation continued, Rahim noticed that Karen kept checking her clipboard and frowning. He spoke gently. "Mrs. Miller, rules are important, but enforcing them without understanding the situation can cause unnecessary stress. I hope we can all focus on community and fairness." Karen's expression softened slightly. She did not respond immediately but nodded. Rahim's words had a subtle effect. She realized that the neighbors respected Rahim, and any further aggressive behavior would make her appear unreasonable. After the tea, as people began leaving, Rahim and Mina cleaned up quietly. Mina said, "Dad, I think she is starting to understand. Maybe she will stop trying to create problems." Rahim smiled. "Perhaps. Sometimes people need to see calm and fairness to realize that conflict is not the only solution. We must lead by example." Karen returned to her house deep in thought. She had underestimated Rahim's patience and intelligence. She began to wonder if her strict methods were appropriate or if she had been too aggressive. Over the next week, Karen's behavior changed slightly. She still monitored the street but spoke less sharply. She did not call the police again and avoided direct confrontation. Rahim continued his daily routine, teaching Mina important lessons about calmness, logic, and fairness. One afternoon, while watering the plants, Rahim explained, "Mina, sometimes people act out of fear or desire for control. Your response should be measured and kind. It allows situations to resolve without unnecessary conflict." Mina nodded. "I understand, Dad. I will remember that." The neighborhood slowly started to relax. Other families felt safer knowing Rahim was nearby, someone who handled difficult situations with intelligence and calm authority. Even Karen, despite her initial frustration, began to reconsider her approach. However, Rahim knew that this was only the beginning. People like Karen often persisted quietly, looking for small mistakes to exaggerate. He also knew that patience, fairness, and vigilance would keep his family safe, while teaching others an important lesson about respect and common sense. For now, the street returned to a quieter rhythm, with neighbors talking, children playing, and families enjoying their homes. Yet in the back of Karen's mind, a sense of tension remained. She had never faced someone like Rahim before, someone who could respond to aggression with calm authority. Rahim and Mina walked back into their home, smiling at each other. "We handled it well, Dad," Mina said. "Yes, we did," Rahim replied. "But we must always be ready for what comes next. Patience is important, but preparation is also key." As the sun set over the quiet neighborhood, Rahim looked at the horizon, thinking about the days ahead. The peaceful life he had dreamed of was not without challenges, but he was ready. Mina by his side felt safer than ever, knowing that her father's wisdom and calmness could face any storm. The story of Karen's interference was far from over, but Rahim had set the tone. Intelligence, patience, and fairness had already begun to reshape the neighborhood dynamic, proving that true authority came not from force, but from respect and understanding. The week after the tea gathering passed quietly. Rahim continued his routine, balancing work at the courthouse with time at home. Mina spent her mornings reading or helping with household chores and her afternoons chatting with friends or exploring nearby parks. The neighborhood, for the most part, appeared calm. But Rahim knew calm could be deceiving. Karen, though slightly less aggressive, had not forgotten her previous encounter. She continued monitoring the street from her window, taking notes and occasionally whispering to herself. She believed she was keeping the neighborhood safe, but her actions had begun to frustrate the neighbors. Small misunderstandings and unnecessary emails from Karen had created tension in the community. Rahim decided it was time to address the situation formally, but in a calm and intelligent way. He wanted to establish clear boundaries not only for Karen, but for the entire neighborhood. One evening, after Mina had gone to her room to study, Rahim drafted a polite letter to the HOA and all neighbors. It was firm, respectful, and clear. He explained his family's commitment to the community and their understanding of the rules. He also emphasized that unnecessary complaints or escalations would not be tolerated. Rahim delivered the letters personally, handing one to Karen with a calm smile. She unfolded the paper, expecting some apology or weakness. Instead, she read his words carefully. "Dear neighbors," the letter began. "I am Rahim Ahmed, a new resident of this community. I value peace, cooperation, and fairness. My family and I intend to follow all HOA rules and respect our neighbors. At the same time, we expect communication to be based on facts and common sense. False reports or unnecessary complaints cause distress and confusion. I am confident that we can work together to maintain a positive environment. Thank you for your understanding." Karen's hands trembled slightly as she finished reading. Rahim looked at her calmly. "I hope this clarifies my position, Mrs. Miller. Respect and fairness are the foundation of a healthy community." Karen swallowed hard. She felt a mixture of anger and embarrassment. She had tried to assert control, but Rahim had turned her efforts into a lesson for the entire neighborhood. Over the next few days, the atmosphere on the street began to change. The neighbors were more relaxed, and Karen's emails and complaints became less frequent. She still observed from her window, but she no longer marched across the street or called the police. Rahim noticed the shift, but remained vigilant. He continued teaching Mina important lessons about calmness, intelligence, and fairness. One afternoon, while tending to the garden, he said, "Mina, some people act out of fear or a desire to control. They may test your patience. Our response should always be careful, respectful, and firm. That way we protect ourselves while showing the right example." Mina nodded thoughtfully. "I see, Dad. So even when they act unfairly, we don't react angrily. We respond with calm and clarity." "Exactly," Rahim replied. "Anger often escalates problems. Patience and strategy resolve them." Despite Rahim's calm approach, Karen began trying subtler tactics. She sent an anonymous note to the neighborhood suggesting that Rahim's family had violated a rule about yard maintenance. She also asked neighbors if they had seen unusual behavior near his house. Her attempts were indirect, but Rahim quickly discovered them. Instead of responding with anger, Rahim invited the HOA president and a few key neighbors for a small meeting at his house. He wanted to resolve the issue calmly and fairly, without public confrontation. During the meeting, Rahim explained the situation in a neutral tone. There have been some unverified reports regarding my family. I understand the importance of rules, and we follow them completely. However, false reports or unnecessary complaints create tension. I hope we can all agree that communication based on facts and mutual respect will benefit everyone. The neighbors nodded in agreement. Mr. Brooks said, "You are right, Rahim. We noticed some of the complaints were exaggerated. Your approach is fair and clear." Even the HOA president, who had not been aware of Karen's full behavior, nodded. "We will ensure all reports are verified in the future. Thank you for bringing this calmly to our attention." Rahim's calm authority had created a ripple effect. Karen, while sitting quietly during the meeting, realized that her influence was no longer as powerful. The neighbors respected Rahim's intelligence and fairness, and that respect limited her ability to dominate the street. Mina watched from the side and whispered, "Dad, you handled it perfectly. Even when she tried to act behind the scenes, you stopped it calmly." Rahim smiled. "Mina, understanding people and their motivations is important. Some people test boundaries to see what they can control. By staying calm and firm, we show that fairness is stronger than fear." Despite the small victories, Rahim knew the situation required continued vigilance. Karen could try again, perhaps with a more subtle approach, or she might involve other neighbors in her efforts. He had to be ready, not just for his family, but for the entire street. Over the next week, Rahim observed Karen quietly. She no longer crossed the street or waved her clipboard aggressively, but her eyes still followed every move. It was clear she was waiting for an opportunity. Rahim continued his calm routine, working at home, spending time with Mina, and interacting politely with neighbors. One afternoon, Mina suggested a small neighborhood gathering, similar to the tea from before. "Dad, people seemed happier after the last gathering. Maybe we can have another one. It will help show that we are friendly and cooperative." Rahim nodded. "That is a good idea. It strengthens community bonds and reduces tension. Karen will also see that cooperation is more effective than confrontation." They sent out invitations to all neighbors, including Karen. Some neighbors responded with excitement, while others were curious to see if Karen would attend. When the day arrived, the gathering was cheerful. Children played on the lawns, neighbors shared snacks, and Rahim quietly observed, making sure the environment was positive. Karen arrived reluctantly, clutching her clipboard. She tried to appear confident, but noticed that neighbors were smiling and laughing, not taking her authority seriously. Rahim greeted her politely. "Mrs. Miller, thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy the gathering." Karen did not speak at first, but nodded stiffly. As the afternoon progressed, she observed that her presence did not control the event. Neighbors were polite, cheerful, and clearly respected Rahim's calm leadership. By the end of the gathering, Karen realized that her aggressive attempts to dominate the neighborhood were ineffective. She had underestimated Rahim's intelligence, patience, and influence. He had demonstrated authority through calmness and fairness, not force. After everyone left, Rahim and Mina cleaned up. Mina said, "Dad, it worked. The neighbors are relaxed, and even Karen seems unsure now." Rahim smiled. "Yes, Mina. Calm authority and fairness often resolve conflicts more effectively than confrontation. We have set boundaries without anger. That is the power of respect and reason." As they sat on the porch, Rahim reflected on the days that had passed. The neighborhood was slowly transforming. Where tension and suspicion once existed, respect and understanding were beginning to grow. Karen still posed challenges, but her influence was limited, and her attempts to dominate had less effect. Mina leaned against her father. "Dad, I feel safer here now. I understand why you teach me these lessons. They are not just about rules, but about how to live wisely." Rahim nodded. "Exactly, Mina. Life is full of people like Karen. Some try to control or intimidate. But calmness, patience, and fairness create stronger foundations for safety and respect than fear ever could." As the sun set over the quiet street, Rahim and Mina looked at the peaceful homes and green lawns. They knew challenges would come again, but they were prepared. They had learned that intelligence, fairness, and calm authority could transform conflict into understanding. The neighborhood had begun to see a new order, one based not on fear or rules alone, but on respect, clarity, and cooperation. Karen's attempts to dominate were no longer the center of the street's attention. Rahim's wisdom had created a foundation that would protect his family and influence the neighborhood for the better. A few weeks passed since Rahim's calm and fair approach had reduced the tension in the neighborhood. Mina continued enjoying her summer, and the street seemed quieter. Most neighbors were polite, relaxed, and even friendly toward Karen, but Rahim knew better than to think the matter was fully resolved. Karen had not forgotten her embarrassment, and she was quietly planning her next move. One bright morning, Rahim was in his study reviewing legal papers. Mina was nearby, sketching in her notebook. The sunlight streamed through the windows, and for a moment everything felt peaceful. Suddenly, a knock at the door interrupted them. Rahim opened the door to find Karen standing there holding a folder. Her face looked serious, determined. "Mr. Ahmed," she began, "I want to discuss some serious matters regarding neighborhood compliance. There have been several complaints, and I think your family is violating HOA rules repeatedly." Rahim invited her in politely. "Mrs. Miller, please have a seat. I'm sure we can resolve this calmly and fairly." Karen sat stiffly and opened her folder. Inside were printed notes and photographs. "These are records from last week. You were seen allowing friends to park on the street without notice. Your lawn has minor untrimmed areas. Your daughter's visitors sometimes stay beyond approved hours. This is a clear violation of HOA rules." Rahim glanced at the folder. The photos showed nothing serious, just ordinary parking and normal lawn maintenance. He leaned back calmly. "Mrs. Miller, I appreciate your diligence, but these examples do not constitute violations. My family follows the rules, and all minor differences are within reasonable limits. We are happy to correct small matters if necessary, but nothing here is illegal or disruptive." Karen's lips pressed tightly. "We cannot allow exceptions. If one household ignores the rules, it encourages others. The community cannot function that way." Rahim nodded slowly. "I understand the need for order, but fairness requires that enforcement is based on facts, not assumptions or exaggerations. Reporting minor differences as violations causes unnecessary tension. Cooperation and understanding are stronger than fear." Karen sighed but did not leave. She was persistent. "Mr. Ahmed, I respect your position, but my duty is to protect the neighborhood. You may not see the problems, but others do. We need stricter enforcement." Rahim smiled calmly. "Mrs. Miller, I am always happy to follow HOA rules, but I ask that enforcement be reasonable, factual, and based on verified information. Otherwise, it creates unnecessary conflict. I hope we can find agreement on this principle." Karen nodded reluctantly, feeling that Rahim's calm authority made it difficult to argue. She left the house, muttering quietly. Rahim watched her go, knowing this was only the beginning of her subtle attempts to control the neighborhood. Later that week, Mina noticed Karen talking to a few neighbors. They whispered together, glanced at Rahim's house, and then left quickly. Mina turned to her father. "Dad, I think she's trying something new." "She's talking behind our backs," Rahim nodded. "Yes, she is attempting to influence others without direct confrontation. This is a common tactic of people who wish to assert control quietly. We must respond calmly and with clarity, without anger." The next day, Rahim decided to act preemptively. He drafted a clear message to all neighbors explaining the facts about visitor rules, parking, and lawn maintenance. He emphasized cooperation, fairness, and calm communication. The message was polite, factual, and addressed potential misunderstandings without targeting anyone personally. When the message circulated, neighbors read it carefully. Many smiled, realizing that Rahim's approach was honest and transparent. Karen, however, fumed silently. She could no longer manipulate the neighborhood easily because Rahim had informed everyone of the truth. Despite this, Karen continued her attempts. She created a detailed report of supposed violations and sent it to the HOA president. She claimed that Rahim's family was disrespecting the rules and that stricter action was needed. She also suggested that a meeting be held to discuss potential penalties. The HOA president, aware of Rahim's calm and logical nature, hesitated. She knew that Rahim had already established respect in the neighborhood. Taking action against him without verified evidence could backfire. Rahim received notice of the HOA meeting. He reviewed the report carefully, noting every exaggerated claim. The document listed minor lawn differences, Normal parking and harmless visits as serious violations. Rahim smiled. The document only reinforced how absurd Karen's attempts had become. The day of the meeting arrived. The HOA board gathered in the community room. Karen appeared confident, holding her folder of evidence. Rahim entered calmly with Mina and a few neighbors who supported fairness. He greeted everyone politely. "Good morning," Rahim said, his voice calm but firm. "I understand we are here to discuss neighborhood rules. I am happy to provide clarity on any concerns." Karen began presenting her report aggressively. She explained the supposed violations, emphasizing that Rahim's family had ignored rules repeatedly. The board listened, some taking notes, others whispering quietly. When she finished, Rahim stood and spoke calmly. "Thank you for your presentation. I would like to address each point factually." He went through each claim, explaining clearly why the so-called violations were minor or non-existent. He also presented his own evidence: visitor approvals, proper lawn care schedules, and the fact that parking rules had been followed. The board members listened carefully. Some whispered to each other. Rahim continued, "It is important to enforce rules fairly based on facts. Exaggeration and assumptions create conflict, not cooperation. I am happy to follow the rules and encourage all neighbors to communicate calmly and directly. This benefits everyone in the community." Karen's confident expression faltered. The board members looked at her, realizing that Rahim's calm authority had clearly exposed exaggeration in her claims. She tried to respond, but her words sounded defensive and weak. One of the neighbors who had joined Rahim spoke up. "We have seen nothing problematic. Rahim and his family have been cooperative, polite, and respectful. There is no cause for any penalty or escalation." The board president nodded. "Based on the facts presented today, there is no evidence of serious violations. We encourage all communication to be respectful, verified, and reasonable. Any future claims should be carefully reviewed before action is taken." Karen left the meeting quietly, holding her folder tightly. Her attempts to dominate had been unsuccessful. The neighborhood, the board, and even the neighbors supporting her saw the truth. Rahim's calm and intelligent handling had prevented unnecessary conflict. Back at home, Rahim and Mina discussed the outcome. "Dad, you made everyone see that facts and fairness matter." Karen couldn't argue because she had nothing real to present. Rahim smiled. "Exactly, Mina. Authority is not about force or fear. It is about clarity, calmness, and truth. When people see that, they respect it naturally." Mina looked thoughtful. "I think she will try less now. She has learned that she cannot control everyone with anger or rules alone." "Yes," Rahim agreed. "But we must remain aware. Some people never give up entirely. They may wait for another chance. That is why calm vigilance is always necessary." The neighborhood began to change. Where tension once existed, respect and understanding started to take root. Neighbors felt safer and more connected. They saw that true leadership came from reason, patience, and fairness, not authority or fear. Even Karen, despite her stubbornness, began to modify her behavior. She still observed from her window occasionally, but she no longer confronted neighbors aggressively. Rahim's calm, fair, and confident approach had established a foundation that even she could not ignore. As Rahim sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset with Mina, he reflected on the lessons they had learned. Calmness and intelligence could turn potential conflict into understanding. Respect, fairness, and patience could protect a family and influence an entire community. Mina leaned against her father. "Dad, I am learning so much from you. I see that you do not need to fight to win. You just need to stay calm and fair." Rahim nodded. "Yes, Mina. Life will always present challenges, but calmness and reason are stronger than anger or intimidation. We must always respond with clarity and integrity." The street was peaceful again, at least for the moment. Rahim knew challenges could return, but he had established a strong foundation. He had protected his family, educated the neighbors, and even changed Karen's approach. The quiet strength of patience, fairness, and intelligence had begun to reshape the neighborhood. The neighborhood had settled into a calm rhythm over the past weeks. Children played on the sidewalks, neighbors waved from their porches, and most importantly, Rahim and Mina felt a sense of safety and belonging. Yet Rahim remained aware that Karen, though quieter, still observed everything with sharp eyes. He knew that the final test of peace would come when Karen fully recognized the impact of her own actions. One sunny morning, Rahim decided to take proactive steps. He believed that clear communication, kindness, and transparency could resolve the tension permanently. He began with a casual visit to a few neighbors' homes, bringing baked goods and sharing a cheerful conversation. Sam and Lena smiled warmly while Mr. Brooks and Mrs. Lee praised the calm way Rahim had handled previous conflicts. Mina followed him, noticing how her father engaged everyone politely. "Dad, people really respect you. I think Karen will notice this too," she said. Rahim nodded. "Yes, Mina. When kindness and fairness guide our actions, people notice. Influence built on respect lasts longer than influence built on fear or authority." Karen, meanwhile, watched from her window. She saw Rahim walking among neighbors, laughing and sharing small stories. She noticed how the other residents responded positively. Her face reflected a mix of frustration and curiosity. For the first time, she began to wonder if her previous strictness had actually caused more tension than safety. That afternoon, Karen decided to approach Rahim directly. She knocked on the door, holding her clipboard loosely, her posture slightly less rigid than usual. Rahim opened the door and greeted her calmly. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Miller," he said. "How can I help you today?" Karen took a deep breath. "Mr. Ahmed, I wanted to talk. I realize I may have overreacted in the past. I called the police over your daughter's visitor and sent several complaints that, in hindsight, were unnecessary. I wanted to apologize." Rahim remained composed, his voice gentle but firm. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Acknowledging a mistake takes courage. I appreciate your honesty. Our neighborhood functions best when we communicate directly and fairly." Karen's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I realize now that my approach caused tension and stress for everyone, including my neighbors. I was so focused on enforcing rules that I forgot to consider kindness and common sense." Rahim smiled. "Rules are important, but context and fairness are equally important. You have the ability to make this neighborhood a positive place by balancing enforcement with understanding." Karen nodded. "I see that now. I will try to change. I will no longer make assumptions or exaggerate minor issues. I hope we can cooperate from now on." Rahim extended his hand politely. "I look forward to that, Mrs. Miller. Cooperation benefits everyone, and I am confident we can work together positively." Karen shook his hand, a gesture of genuine acknowledgement. For the first time, she understood that respect, calmness, and reason carried more influence than force or intimidation. The next few days were noticeably different. Karen began to participate more respectfully in community discussions. She still monitored the street occasionally, but instead of criticizing, she offered helpful suggestions when needed. Rahim continued to engage the neighbors with kindness and clear communication. Mina noticed the change. "Dad, it feels like the neighborhood is finally peaceful. Even Karen seems different." "Yes, Mina," Rahim replied. "Sometimes people need guidance and example to change. Calmness, clarity, and fairness often influence behavior more than confrontation ever could." One afternoon, Rahim organized a small neighborhood meeting at the park. Children played on the grass while adults gathered around. He spoke gently, encouraging open communication and cooperation. Karen listened quietly, nodding in agreement with the points Rahim made. Rahim said, "We all want a safe and happy community. Rules are necessary, but respect and fairness are equally important. When we communicate clearly and base our actions on facts, we strengthen the neighborhood and our bonds as neighbors." A few residents spoke in support of Rahim's words, emphasizing how his calm and reasoned approach had improved the atmosphere. Karen, for the first time, felt part of a united community rather than a controller of it. Later that week, Rahim and Mina hosted a small gathering at their home, inviting neighbors for snacks and conversation. Karen accepted the invitation politely, bringing a plate of cookies she had baked. The gesture surprised everyone, as she had never participated in neighborhood activities before. During the gathering, Karen approached Rahim privately. "Mr. Ahmed, thank you for showing patience with me. I have realized how much my previous actions caused unnecessary tension. I hope to do better moving forward." Rahim smiled. "I appreciate your sincerity, Mrs. Miller. Change is always possible when people choose reflection and understanding over anger and control. This is the best way to lead a community." The neighbors noticed the interaction and quietly respected the reconciliation. Children ran freely on the lawn, neighbors laughed together, and the street began to feel like a true community, rather than a place governed by fear or strict rules. As the sun set, Rahim and Mina cleaned up, reflecting on the events of the past weeks. Mina said, "Dad, I learned so much from this. You showed me that calmness and fairness can solve problems bigger than we expect." Rahim nodded. "Yes, Mina. Life will always present challenges and some people will test boundaries. But responding with reason, patience, and integrity creates lasting respect. That is more powerful than any rule enforced with fear." In the following months, the neighborhood remained peaceful. Karen occasionally observed the street but now offered helpful reminders or suggestions instead of complaints. She learned to communicate with respect rather than authority. Other neighbors noticed the positive change and felt safer and more connected than ever. Rahim continued his daily routine, balancing work, family time, and neighborhood engagement. Mina thrived in this environment, learning the importance of calm authority, fairness, and thoughtful action. The lessons from these events became part of her character, shaping her understanding of how to handle conflict with intelligence and patience. One morning, while having tea on the porch, Rahim looked at the street, noticing children playing and neighbors chatting happily. Mina joined him. "Dad, the neighborhood feels different now. Everyone seems happier and even Karen is more reasonable." Rahim smiled. "Yes, Mina. True change comes from patience, clear communication, and example. Conflict can be transformed into understanding when approached wisely. This is the foundation of lasting peace in any community." Karen walked past the house that afternoon and waved politely at Rahim and Mina. For the first time, her posture was relaxed and her eyes showed respect rather than suspicion. Rahim waved back, a small smile acknowledging the new understanding between them. The street, once tense and full of unnecessary conflict, had transformed into a neighborhood of respect, cooperation, and friendliness. Rahim's calm authority, intelligence, and fairness had not only protected his family but had influenced the community positively. The residents learned that respect and understanding carried more weight than fear, and Karen herself became a part of that positive change. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Rahim reflected quietly. He had achieved what he had hoped for, a safe, happy, and respectful community for his family and neighbors. Mina, sitting beside him, felt proud of how her father handled the challenges, learning a valuable lesson about the power of patience, clarity, and calm leadership. The neighborhood was peaceful, the residents connected, and even the once overbearing Karen had learned to respect boundaries and understand the value of fairness. Rahim knew that challenges could arise in the future, but he also knew that patience, intelligence, and fairness would guide them through anything. The quiet strength of reason had prevailed, creating lasting harmony. The street had become a true community, and Rahim's family finally enjoyed the peaceful life they had dreamed of.